Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight in celebration of the 14 years we have been under the protection of our glorious leader, King Henry IV. Hail to the King. And what an astonishing 14 years it has been. Food stocks have been steadily on the incline, morale across the kingdom is at an all-time high. And with the help of our skilled team of researchers, it has been determined that England has become the most culturally and militarily advanced nation in the world. With that being said, we here at the York Broadcasting System are proud to present the first in a 6-episode miniseries detailing the story of England, our loving king, and how he transformed it into the powerhouse that it is today. Now, to follow the story of who's who in this political world is no easy feat. And thusly we have attempted to condense the narrative while keeping as many of the facts as clear as humanly possible. Nonetheless, understand that this is the full truth, as it was, with no alterations or changes. Let us begin. We will start first with an incredibly brief history of our glorious nation. For who can tell a riveting tale without a little exposition? As you are all well aware, over the past millennia, England has firmly held its ground on this lovely little island of ours. Founded by our great patriarch, William the Conqueror himself, our people were able to, through their superior will and vigilance, drive off the natives of this land and establish the order that our beloved nation so cherishes today. Throughout the next 2,000 years, our ancestors were able to expand their loving will to the people of the West and the North. However, further expansion upwards was thwarted by the creation of another nation, the uncivilized and brutish people of Scotland. Back in the West, the great warriors of our people were able to pacify the lands of the Welsh. However, they have never seemed to fully acknowledge their defeat, as their distemperature plagues our wonderful England even to this very day. We will, of course, be discussing that in a later episode. The Scots and the Welsh, combined with the wicked treachery of the overseas French, have been a constant threat to England's prowess since time immemorial. Fortunately, our people have been blessed with the strong hands of iron rulers to light the path through all our nation's darkest times. However, up to recently, that light had been failing us. Weak and greedy rulers had brought us to our knees. Anarchy reigned supreme in London, giving our perdiferous neighbors the perfect opportunity to destroy our very homes. It was a dark time indeed for our England, especially under the rule of the great Kiesling himself, Richard II. We shall return to this story in a further episode, but rest assured that his infamous tyranny was put to an end by our loving and gracious king, whose authority and clarity have brought England back to the light that it so rightly deserves. Thank you all for tuning in with us tonight. And once more, hail to the King. Good evening. Welcome back to episode 2 of our critically acclaimed mini-series following the life of our gracious Lord Henry IV. Hail to the King. Today we will be discussing the origin story of our wonderful king and the shameful rule of the previous tyrant, Richard II. Be prepared to witness tales of heroic maneuvers and humble beginnings in today's episode. Our king was born one fateful day in April at the distinguished Bolingbroke Castle, where he was, until his crowning, endowed with the fitting title of Henry Bolingbroke. Born into the illustrious house of Lancaster, Henry was raised with a passion for protecting the citizens and dignity of his nation. Now, it may shock many listeners to learn, but our beloved Henry was once an acquaintance of the tyrant himself, Richard II. The two did indeed grow up and study together. However, through some misinterpretation in the line of succession, it was Richard who stealthily ascended to the throne in place of our rightful king. As England's leader, Richard was weak and conciliatory. His own personal cowardice had oozed into the very framework of England, presenting an exposed target to our Scottish and Welsh neighbors. Truly a disgraceful time. Richard was so paranoid in maintaining his power that he would banish many of his closest advisors from England, including our noble Henry himself, who in the process was even trying to defend the honor of this false king. However, our tactful sovereign had a plan to restore his rightful name and in the process our beautiful country. Upon hearing that Richard had departed to Ireland, our Henry returned to England in full force, rallying the noble families to his side and seizing London right out from under Richard's nose. The assistance of England's greatest families made our Henry's return possible, some of the most crucial being the houses of Neville and Percy. May their contributions never be forgot. Upon Richard's return, seeing the odds righteously stacked against him, he abdicated his false throne and was immediately arrested. Then our Henry, humble as he is, took upon himself the burden of returning England to its former glory, and we have been the happiest and most powerful nation ever since. As for the tyrant himself, there's not much more to say. Shortly after arriving at Pentonville Prison, Richard passed away from an unknown illness, which doctors were fortunately able to confine and dispel before it could spread to other inmates. With all of this talk of the late tyrant, we would like to remind our listeners that Richard is indeed dead, and the only true hope for our future rests in the good graces of our loving King Henry IV. Thank you all for tuning in to the Yorick Broadcasting System tonight, and once more, hail to the King. Good evening, and thank you for joining the Yorick Broadcasting System for the third episode of our well-deserved mini-series on the reign of King Henry IV. Hail to the King. Today's episode will be taking a much darker turn, as we must discuss the monstrous enemies of our beautiful England, particularly the powers of Scotland and our rebellious traitors in Wales. As citizens of this glorious nation, it is our duty to know well those who threaten the prosperity our righteous King Henry has brought us. So please pay attention to today's episode and know who your enemies are. We will start with the villains of Scotland, the dangerous and untrustworthy people of the north. Scotland has been a constant thorn in the side of England's expansion on this island of ours, and since then there have been many notorious generals that have led their forces against us. Nowadays that general takes the form of Archibald Douglas, the 4th Earl of the Douglas clan. As was stated before, the infamous Archibald IV is the 4th Earl of the Douglas clan, one of the most powerful and aggressive clans in Scotland's history. Over the years, the Douglas has gained a reputation for his brutality on the battlefield. Many a time he has pushed back and massacred our glorious forces, even once defeating our distinguished general Henry Hotspur Percy at the Battle of East Linton. Now in control of a massive Scottish force, the Douglas lies in wait, planning his next move against our sovereignty. But rest assured, our noble forces will be ready when he strikes. Now, we will talk about our much more immediate enemy, the Welsh rebel Owen Glendower. Once a distinguished general in the king's army, Glendower rose up in arms against the king nearly 3 years ago, and has been a constant nuisance to the kingdom ever since. Glendower believes he is fighting for the heritage of the Welsh people, who clearly don't understand how better their lives have been under the English rule. He has seemingly reclaimed the title of Prince of Wales, a title which rightfully belongs to King Henry's son, our beloved Prince Hal.
Attention, citizens of England. Do not believe the lies that your false king spoon feeds you. You are being controlled. The casting system tells you only what Henry wants you to believe, never the truth. I fight not only for the honor of the Welsh, but for all those that suffer under. Rise with me, and with the hand of fate behind us, we will break the bonds of subordination that keep this tyrant in power. Rise with Glendower, my friends.
Due to some technical malfunctions, I'm afraid we'll have to end the episode a little early today, but thank you for tuning in with us at the Yorick Broadcasting System, and have a great night, and hail to the King! Good evening, citizens of England. Hail to the King. Today we need to interrupt our mini-series to bring you up to speed with our country's current events. Just today we have received that the fiend Owen Glendower has launched yet another attack against our people in Wales. We will now go live to Wales itself with our correspondent Cyrus O'Hara for more information. How's it going out there, Cyrus?
Thank you, sir, and hail to the King. I'm standing right now here in Wales with our English forces, which are right down the road, and we are outside the town of Bryn Glas, which is across the other edge of the forest, where Glendower and his forces have set up a base of operations. There's no news to speak of yet, but Lord Edmund Mortimer, who is leading our English forces today, expects the climactic battle to happen in the next couple of days, maybe at the end of the week. We will, of course, keep you up to date with any information possible. Thank you, and back to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Cyrus. In other news, reports from the north have determined that the Douglas is assembling a massive force of Scottish troops, no doubt to press an advantage into our England. Generals Hotspur Percy and his father, the Earl of Northumberland, have been sent to deal with this threat and will no doubt achieve victory. In news closer to home, Prince Hal, our lovely and charismatic Prince of Wales, appears to be missing from the King's Palace in London again. If any citizen happens to catch sight of the prince or knows his whereabouts, they are encouraged to disclose this information to the King's Court in haste. That's all for tonight. Thank you for watching, and hail to the King.